Hey folks, I'm Allison. Welcome to my Hamnet reading vlog. I don't know that much about this novel, other than that it is about Shakespeare's son, but that Shakespeare is never explicitly named. And that there is a movie coming out very soon starring Paul Mescal, who I love. So I wanted to try to read the book ahead of the movie, and with any luck, I will get this video posted ahead of the movie as well. Yesterday got a little bit away from me and I wasn't able to circle back and film, but I am about 100 or so pages into Hamnet, and my first impressions are twofold. It is the perfect fall into winter, dark, vibey book. So much of it takes place in dark forests, or with the main characters walking through forest paths and tending their bees and collecting herbs and distilling them into potions. It just has such a delightful cottagecore, witchcore kind of vibe. And I think it's so cozy and so sort of eerie and chilly and spooky, but in the absolute best way. So I would definitely say, if you're looking for something to fill the, days are getting shorter, nights are getting longer, lighting the fire kind of vibe, definitely pick this up right now. It is the perfect time of year to read it. My second thought is that I am really impressed by how well the author is handling the dual timelines. The story is told in set in two different times, about 15 years apart. The first, you open the book and it's with the children of Shakespeare and his wife when they are young, and it's from the perspective of his young son. And then you jump back in time to when Shakespeare was first meeting his wife, and the two timelines, you flip back and forth between them, between different chapters. And that is something that often really bothers me. I feel like it's very difficult to not have one timeline feel much more compelling than the other, or to just feel sort of lost and confused when you're starting somewhere and then all of a sudden there's a big jump somewhere else. But this, because the time period is so short and there's a lot of character overlap, and I think just because Maggie O'Farrell is handling that balance between making them both feel very urgent, it is working really, really well, and I am very, very impressed. Those are the only two things that really jumped out at me so far, but I will come back with more updates when I'm a little further along. Okay, I am about 2/3 of the way through. I have just finished part 1 and I am about to start part 2. And I am absolutely loving this book. The way that this book talks about the prophecy and people's future and the veil between life and death and the connections between humans and nature are just such beautiful examples of magical realism. And I think historical fiction books like this can do a really good job at magical realism sometimes, because the characters in this time, this takes place in the 1500s, really believe in magic in a way that, even people today who are sort of open to the idea of magic and spirituality and those sorts of things, don't believe in magic in their gut in the way that they believe in the existence of trees. But these characters really believe it. They really believe in magic and prophecy. And the way that the magic, the sort of spooky, ethereal way that the magic is described, is so lovely. I mean, just absolutely so beautiful. This book is also incredibly sad. After I finished reading, I just finished reading, this part, and I had to take a minute to collect myself because I had, that sense of sort of tightness in my eyes and in my chest, like I was going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I don't really cry at books, but this one is really hitting me. It takes place, so like I said, it takes place in 2 timelines. The first timeline is when Hamnet's parents, Shakespeare and his mother, are falling in love. But the second timeline takes place, the entire thing, over the course of maybe 48 hours when Hamnet's sister falls ill. And you just follow the progression of her illness. And I don't really have a sense of how the second part is going to be, but the first part has just been absolutely heart-wrenching. But, it's written in such a beautiful, sort of Shakespearean tragedy kind of way that that even though it is incredibly sad, I am absolutely loving it. Okay, I finished Hamnet. I really enjoyed this book overall, but I didn't think the second part, which is like the last third of the book, was nearly as strong as the first part. The first part really blew my mind. The second part was basically, between the 2 parts, there's, without spoiling it, a significant event that happens. And the first part is leading up to the event, and it has this sense of drawing all of the characters together. And then the second part is the aftermath of the event, and it has the feeling of sort of everything falling apart and all of the characters being sort of strewn far and wide. And it just made it less fun to read. I also think that the second part is where the author really tries to make explicit, not totally explicit, but much more explicit, the connection between this work of fiction that she's writing and the historical figure of Shakespeare. And I felt that the way she tried to draw that connection made the last part of the book feel a little stilted. I didn't really need this book to be about Shakespeare, I think, for the narrative to have been really compelling and the book to have done what I wanted it to do. And it's kind of fun that it's about Shakespeare, and I understand that it adds a little bit of weight sort of to the character of the father, who is Shakespeare. But I didn't find that the sort of like tying up of that connection at the end really added much, and it meant that the narrative had to sort of drag on to get the characters to where they needed to go to make the connection. I also felt like we have a lot of characters in this book who don't really get very developed, and in the second part we spend a lot more time with these sort of underdeveloped characters than we do with like the core characters that I really cared about and that I felt like had been really developed as interesting and nuanced people. And so that also made it just less fun to read. I still thought it was really good. The things that I liked about the first part, the very vibey atmosphere, and the second part is still very sad, and the sort of portrayal of grief is very well done. It feels very realistic. You can see the way that grief would sort of put cracks into the relationships and sort of result in the kinds of unraveling that it results in. But I was somewhat disappointed by the last third, given how much I absolutely loved the first, whatever it was, 250 pages. I don't really have that much else to say about this book. I think it is very beautiful. It is very well written. It is a really good, vibey, fall into winter kind of book. I'm still really excited to see the movie. I expect the movie is going to be really beautiful. But before I read the last part, I really thought that I was going to be giving this book like a 10 out of 10. And I think in the end, I'd give it maybe an 8 out of 10. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to hear more from me, please consider subscribing, and thank you so much for spending some of your one wild and precious life with me watching this video.